What happens when you are hunted, trapped, and out of options, except for God? Hi, I'm Mila, and this is my husband, who will be narrating. 2 Samuel 22:30 says, "For by thee I have run through a troop. By my God, I have leaped over a wall." There could be no better verse than this for this story. I wonder if all of our life stories have a verse that fit us perfectly. We have some very special friends with us here today. Lyman and Elaine Shaw. Lyman is a grandson of Pastor Shaw, our hero in the story today. We have known Lyman and Elaine for about 45 years. We worship together at the Blue Mountain Valley Seventh-day Adventist Church in Athena, Oregon. Elaine and I would always get into big trouble with the church board because we wanted to decorate the church, but we stuck together no matter what. We also have Andy Shaw, also a grandson, with us today, and Kay, his wife. Before we go into this incredibly breathtaking story, I want Lyman and Andy to tell us a little about the background of their grandfather, Pastor Lyman Shaw, and where the story all began. Andy, could you tell us about your grandfather's early childhood?
Yeah, my grandfather was Lyman Shaw, and he was born in 1897 in Boston, Massachusetts. He had 3 older brothers and a younger brother and a younger sister. His mother, Ella Mae, was abandoned by her husband for some reason. We're not sure what happened, but he wasn't around to feed him and take care of him. And she ran out of food. And she ran up a grocery bill at the local grocery store, and they wouldn't give her any more credit, and she was at her wit's end and desperate. And apparently they didn't go to church or have anybody to reach out to, and so she decided that she had just enough food for one more meal and some coffee and some poison. Grandpa said it was rat poison, but she put it in there and mixed it up and was going to sit down to their last meal when there was a knock at the door, and it was a little old lady on crutches, and she said, "Is everything okay?" And Grandma said, "No, we've in a desperate situation here." So she was working for the Dorcas Society, just going around checking on the neighborhood, seeing if she could help. And they got some food in there, and the church came in and helped and got that situation resolved, and 3 of those boys became ministers later.
Amazing.
But my grandfather, being hard to handle and kind of a black sheep, Grandma sent him off to Philadelphia to live with his father. And he came back from a couple times to visit, the family, and he would make fun of them because they were going to church and changing their lifestyle and so forth, and he made fun of them. And one of those times, Grandma told him, "You really owe your life to the church." And she explained what had happened. But he still didn't change at that point.
Now, Lyman, could you elaborate on his life before his ministry?
So when Grandpa got a little older and kind of struck out on his own, he was up in Maine working at Goodwin's Mills. And then later he worked for Oldsmobile. And then he ended up riding the rails and became a railroad bum, traveling around, working where he could find a job. At one point he was in Weehite, Idaho, logging. And then he ended up down in Nebraska working in the harvest, and he was dating a girl there, and he kept talking about the Sabbath to him, and finally her mother said, "You talk about this seventh-day Sabbath so much, why in the world don't you keep it yourself?" And he said, "Thank you, ma'am, I think I will." And so he went and found the preacher's house. Andy has some more information on that.
So the preacher wasn't home. So he thought, well, I'll just sit on the front porch and wait for him to come home. And he sat there and he looked, and he had his overalls on, and he had cigarettes in one pocket and his chewing tobacco in the other one. And he knew where that was going to go with the Adventist preacher. So he pulled those out and he threw them out in the cornfield right there. And he said they never came back. He never went back to it. He just quit just like that. And the preacher showed up and got him all set up, and that's when he joined the church.
And they helped him get into school in Shelton Academy in Nebraska, and he took theology classes, and when he got done, he was holding evangelistic meetings in Joplin, Missouri, when he got a call and they asked him if he was interested in going to China as a missionary, and he said, yeah, he would be. And they said, well, if you have a girlfriend, get married and we'll send you to China. He did have a girlfriend. Her name was Elitha Hutches, and he proposed to her, and they got married in May of 1925 and then headed off to China.
The air was thick with fear. The streets of Nanking, China, surged with chaos. Two rival armies clashed in brutal combat, each fighting for control of the city. And in the fury of war, foreigners became the target of blame. A terrifying order swept through the ranks: kill all foreigners. Suddenly, our mission station, once a place of prayer and peace, was now surrounded by violence. Gunfire cracked through the air. Soldiers with guns aimed pounded the streets, and they were trapped in the heart of a war zone. There was no safe path, no place to hide. But just as darkness closed in, God carved out an escape they never could have imagined. This is a true story of how, when death had its orders, heaven overruled. The date, March 21, 1927. Here is the story.
This story is Lyman Shaw's eyewitness account from the 1927 Nanking incident. He carefully typed this out before his death. We have supplemented this today with the USS Noah and the Fall of Nanking by Roger Pineau, Besieged by Stephen Hall, Yankee on the Yangtze by Paul Quimby with Norma Youngberg, and Fighting Angel by Pearl S. Buck. During the months of February and March 1927, the city of Nanking, China witnessed the movement of troops, the northern soldiers, coming and going to and from the battlefields. The Chinese groaned under the burden of supporting the soldiers who forced the coolies to carry them and their supplies about town without a cent of remuneration. Storekeepers were beaten if they refused to take their worthless money in exchange for merchandise. Rather than to change the bad money and pass back a large amount of good money, the storekeepers would give the soldiers the things they wished and say nothing about their money. Because of this treatment from soldiers, stores were boarded up in front and closed. The coolies that were not working were in hiding. On Monday, March 21, 1927, the rumbling of cannon could be heard as the Southern Army approached the great walled city. The silence of the night was pierced by the cracking of machine guns and the roar of cannons, making it impossible for one to sleep. Many cannons were rushed from one end of the city to the other, thus adding to the noise and confusion. Early morning on March 22, the American consul ordered all the women and children to evacuate. Mrs. Shaw, with the other Adventist women, were taken aboard the U.S. destroyer Noah on the Yangtze River. Wednesday, March 23, was a day of fierce bombardment, and at 3 o'clock the streets were filled with thousands of soldiers fleeing in retreat. Mrs. Shaw, being on the Noah, saw the retreating soldiers shooting one another down for a coveted place in some boat to cross the river. At last the northern oppressors were on the run, to the satisfaction of many of the Chinese. For weeks we had seen the heads of those who the Northern Army had beheaded, hanging up in many public places. We, of course, knew not what the new lot of soldiers would bring to the city, but we could only hope for the best. Some days as many as 70 people were beheaded, and the residents of Nanking were looking for new hope in the southern government. Turning to the book Besieged by Stephen Hall, I quote Ira Wallace. And another group of soldiers entered our apartment, rougher and gruffer and more threatening than the first group of about 10, recounted Ira Wallace. These soldiers were angry because nothing was left to give them. Their apartments by this time were cleared of everything. Even the shutters of the building had been taken off. The soldiers thought the true Adventists had hidden treasure. They led me all through the house, trying to force me to locate money for them, recalled Ira Wallace. All the time I had been as pleasant as I could. As they led me through the rooms, I saw that nothing was left but a drawer or two of my desk and a few letters scattered over the floor. Upon further protestations that he had no more money or anything to give for that matter, the soldiers pulled Ira Wallace and Dallas White out the front door and onto the porch, where they purposely loaded their rifles for the two men to see. As one of the fellows loaded his weapon, the ammo clip jammed, which made him violently angry. They then forced Ira Wallace and Dallas White to stand with their backs to the wall by the gate, at which point the soldiers leveled their rifles at them, preparing to fire. Ira Wallace, emotionally exhausted, described his feelings at this moment. In all this, I was much surprised at my composure. Not once did I flinch. Neither did I think God would allow them to shoot. I kept a prayer on my lips, and I felt God was stronger than they. I experienced a feeling I had never had before in the face of great danger, and I had never thought I could be so calm under such circumstances. Surely God was sustaining me, for it was not natural to remain so calm under such conditions. I told them that if they desired to shoot, I was powerless to stop them, but that I had no way to give them any more money. Finally, they demanded that I do something which I understood was to remove my shoes. They then were about to take my cufflinks. Everything from my pockets was gone, when a young Chinese man rushed forward from the crowd and interceded for me. He spoke to the soldiers in a low, calming, yet authoritative voice. "You don't want to do this. These men are American missionaries. They mean us no harm. They are not your enemy. Take their money if you must, but don't take their lives." The boldness of the young man surprised the soldiers. They talked angrily among themselves, with their weapons still aimed at us. Then, with their anger tempered by arguments for caution from the top soldier, they returned my cufflinks and walked back into the crowd. Recovering from our brush with death, Dallas and I put on our shoes and started up the street. Fearing what the night might bring forth, we 7 Adventist men gathered at Brother Doolittle's home. Brother Doolittle was the director of the mission, to consider what we could do for our safety. We realized our need of taking our case to the wonderful counselor who never fails, and after reading Psalm 46, we poured our hearts out in prayer. We each had the peace and satisfaction that only comes in the assurance of God's presence. All the lights on the compound were extinguished, and the watch for the night was established, each man taking his turn in order, consisting of an hour and a half each. Rifle shots cracked about the compound and the nearby wireless station, and all through the night, and the sky was illuminated by flames from fire at the Standard Oil Company tanks. Early the next morning, March 24, we prepared our breakfast and thanked God for his protecting care, and renewed our consecration to him. After breakfast, one of the servants came with the news that the Southern soldiers were taking the clothes from foreigners and giving them to the Chinese. Presently, a soldier broke in the door of the first house, which was occupied by Brother Hartwell and myself. He soon left carrying several of our things in his arms. He stopped at the gate and shot his rifle. Soon other soldiers came. One soldier came to the gate. We 7 men were standing together in front of the third house, and I thought of giving the soldier the key, but as I motioned for him to come, others thought I'd better not. Just then the soldier leveled his rifle straight at us and fired. I ran and jumped over the compound wall, while the other 6 brethren dropped down behind their hedge. Soon they also jumped over the wall, and we were met by a Chinese friend bearing a note. He told us to run for our lives, for the soldiers were there to shoot and kill the foreigners. The note he had was from our friends at the Christian Buddhist mission, telling us that many churches had been burned and homes looted. They also asked for any information that we might have. As the soldiers renewed their firing, we were forced to run over graveyards back to the main road about a mile to the Christian Buddhist mission, our Chinese friend leading the way. As we approached the mission, we were informed that soldiers were inside, so we started across the country to the consulate. We had not gone far, however, until we heard our 2 foreign friends from the mission calling. We went back to where they were and were assured by them and one of their Chinese friends, who was a southerner in plain clothes, that we would be safe if we hid in a house with them. As we followed, they led us into a narrow alley to a Chinese hut. The room was dark and had no windows and had but one door. There were a number of suitcases upon the floor filled with the foreigners' belongings. I did not feel safe there, though some did. I could only picture a brutal murder if we stayed. There was being no possible exit in case trouble started. Brother Quimby was of the same mind, and we finally persuaded the others to go with us. Our Chinese friend accompanied us as we started for the American consulate. Near the consulate, we could see soldiers marching along the road between us, directly in front of the consulate. We hid behind a stone building and sent our Chinese friend ahead to see if help could be sent to us. He had been gone about 10 minutes when another Chinese discovered our hiding and beckoned to the soldiers to come and get us. Seeing our danger, we started for the consulate again, working our way through the angry mob of soldiers who yelled, "Kill them! Kill them!" One soldier said, "No, they're Americans." Mr. Davis, the American consul, was just opening the gate and assured them that we were Americans. We then gave $5 to our Chinese friend and thanked him for his help. The consul told us of the robbing and killing of Dr. John Williams as he led us into his house. Some of the sailors were sleeping in the hall on benches after keeping guard all night. We sat down and started telling our experience to another man who found refuge at the consulate. We had not been there long when 2 policemen came and told Mr. Davis that they could no longer offer protection. The sailors were immediately awakened, and we were loaded down with a machine gun, 1 box of ammunition, and suitcases belonging to Mr. Davis, and suitcases belonging to Mrs. Davis. There were 11 sailors, Mr. and Mrs. Davis and 2 daughters, another refugee, and we 7 Adventists. The 7 Adventist men were Lyman Shaw, H.J. Doolittle, H.M. Burwell, LeClaire E. Reed, Raymond Hartwell, Paul Quimby, and Fred Landis. Much to my surprise, I was asked to carry 2 decks of playing cards in my pockets, which I refused to do. I was asked to carry a box of machine gun shells, which I did. We were ready to start when we found soldiers were passing the rear gate where we wished to go out. We stood in the little alley with silent prayers to God as they passed. As soon as we started outside the gate, the soldiers commenced to fire upon us. I had a heavy overcoat on with a flashlight in it, and with the shells I was carrying, my load grew heavier with each step. The firing became more intense as we ran, and as we passed soldiers while on the run, they would turn and fire upon us. It was a 2-mile run to the Standard Oil Company homes, and they were still far away. As we ran through a graveyard, it seemed like bullets came from every side. Nearly everyone stumbled and fell, and we could hardly go with our heavy loads. As we neared a bamboo grove, the firing was intense. I threw the box of shells over the fence into the grove, and as I did this, it opened, letting all the shells out. I stopped to gather them when the officer in charge said, "Let them go, boy, and run, or you'll be killed." Being nearly exhausted, we discarded our overcoats, for they retarded our progress. Just as we did this, Mrs. Davis nearly fainted, and we carried her up the high hill to the oil house. The sailors and others were given brandy to revive them, and we Adventists took a refreshing drink of water and stretched out upon the floor. Later, a sailor who had been shot came in limping, his back bleeding from the wound. When he was down, 3 soldiers came to kill him, and to save his own life, he killed 2, and the third one threw his gun and ran for his life. A number of soldiers came to the Standard Oil house demanding money, but were finally persuaded to leave. A lunch was served us as the sailors went to the next house to eat. As they were eating in the other house, soldiers entered and took all their money and what things they had. Soon they came to the house where we were, making demands for money. All the sailors and other people were ordered upstairs, and we were told to stay on the floor of the front room. The sailors' guns, all emptied of their shells, were in the room where we were. We expected at any moment to see the soldiers enter and kill us. Finally, the guns were all taken upstairs, and we could hear the sailors reloading them. The consul tried hard to get the southern government to send a guard to take us out of the Great Walled City. We could hear the ugly voices of the soldiers making their demands, and we started to call upon our God in an audible voice. Inserting from Yankee on the Yangtze by Paul Quimby and Norma Youngberg, they repeated their threat to come in and kill us all. We will slit your stomachs and cut out your inwards while you are still alive so you can watch. Torture before murder has always been characteristic of communist soldiers. Now they knew they had plenty of time. There was no way of escape. Ever since our arrival, a Marine signalman had been wigwagging messages from an attic window to the gunboats in the river. We had no way of knowing that the captain of the NOAA was making every possible effort to contact the commander of the Far Eastern Fleet in Shanghai. Without his order, the officers of the gunboat were not to take the responsibility of opening fire on a foreign port. The captain of the destroyer NOAA, Lieutenant Commander Roy C. Smith, Jr., U.S. Navy, made the comment, "Well, I'll either get a medal or a court-martial out of this," and gave the order, "Let her go, Benny," to Lieutenant Benjamin F. Stout, U.S. Navy. Number 1 and number 2 guns of NOAA let go with 4-inch flat-nosed projectiles. In a moment, Emerald's 6 inchers opened up. NOAA's slow and deliberate fire stopped after 19 rounds, but Emerald continued with single guns at 1-minute intervals. Huge crowds on the Bund and along the shore disappeared as if by magic, as did all soldiers near Saucony House. Going back to Lyman Shaw's account, after lying on the floor for fully an hour, we were told that we would all be murdered together and we might as well be together. The cursing and swearing by some in the house made it very hard for us as we asked God to help us. Demands were made for money, and we searched in our pockets and gave all we had, amounting to about $500, which in today's money would be about $9,000. Glasses were taken from the face of Mr. Davis as he tried talking to the Southern soldiers. They also took his watch and said they wanted more money. Finally, they said they were going to kill everyone in the house. The house was at the top of the Great Wall, and we could see the battleships, but they were 2 miles away. We gathered all the sheets in the building and with other bedclothes tied them together, hoping to get over the wall. Mr. Hobart, manager of the Standard Oil Company, stepped out on the front porch and fired off a pistol which sent 3 red rockets into the air. As he did this, the soldiers were firing at him. Finally, he fired 3 more red rockets, and the signalmen stood out in the open fire and sent a message to the ships. The consul sent the message to send a landing party to the foot of the wall where we were. The soldiers could be seen gathering all about us, shooting, and still not one shot was fired by the Americans. The Chinese people were watching by the thousands, and as we were up on a high hill and easy to attract their attention. Realizing the landing party might not arrive and that many soldiers were gathering, the message was sent to point the ship's guns directly over the house, but not to fire. We could hear the soldiers downstairs, and the sailor boys started down after them. We thought we'd lost the day, so the message was sent to fire. Inserting from Yankee on the Yangtze by Paul Quimby. Consul Davis called from the downstairs in a loud voice, "This is the end. We can do no more. They're coming in to kill us." I heard the howling of the maddened soldiers and the pounding of their feet on the stairs. I shut my eyes. I prayed, "Dear God, make me ready." Then an explosive shell burst over Saucony House. Like the intervention of an angry God, like hurled thunder and lightning, like the concentrated wrath of the heavens, Other shells crashed in rapid succession. Above the shattering din, I heard the attacking soldiers clatter down the stairs while shouts of joy rang through Saucony House. Those gunboats in the river had spoken. I staggered to my feet, looked out the window, and saw the soldiers racing out of the house and down the hill. They tumbled over each other. They rolled and scrambled, plunged over steep places, and dived under hedges, anything to escape the terrible tempest loosed by those gunboats in the Yangtze River. The accuracy of those shells fired from the guns between 3 and 4 miles away still amazes me. Not one shell fell on Saucony House. Close to Saucony House, another house stood on an adjoining peak. The consul and Mr. Hobart feared that snipers still waited in that house. They told the Marine in the attic to report their fears to the NOAA. At once, the shell demolished the house. Going back to Lyman Shaw's account, as the rifles began to crack all around the house, we heard the roar from the ship, then the whistling shell, then the loud bursting of it. The second shell landed very close to the side of the house and made the whole building shake. It gave us a sensation as the shells burst and the sailor boys yelled. The southern Chinese soldiers were completely astonished and terrified by such marksmanship. Mrs. Shaw and the other Adventist women also had a sensation as they were down in the bottom of the Noah with their ears filled with cotton as the great guns roared. The Noah was the first ship to fire. Though our deliverance was near, our hearts feared for our other 3 brethren in the city. As soon as possible, we got out of the building and ran to the wall. Some of the sailors went down first to keep guard, and some remained at the top as we went down the great 60-foot stone wall on sheets. The sheets broke several times, and one man fell on his head. Another broke his ankle, and Brother Reed and I and others took turns carrying him 2 miles to the ship. We then had 2 streams to cross. One we crossed on a dike and the other on a small boat. We could not get close to the boat without walking in the water with the wounded man on our backs. And when the boat was loaded, we had to push until we were up to our waists in the water. As the great shells whistled over our heads, we could see hundreds of Chinese huddling like sheep in the hollows. Finally, we reached the river and were taken aboard the British gunboat, the HMS Wolsey. It was then dark, and we had been under strain all day, for it was about 8 or 8:30 o'clock in the morning when we were first fired upon at our compound. Supper was served, and we were praising God for His love. Many were ordering drinks and cigars and not counting the Lord of Glory who loves His children. We were later transferred to the Wing Po. Mrs. Shaw and the other Adventist women were brought from the Noah, and we had a happy reunion in the middle of the Yangtze River, halfway between the 2 armies of the Great Civil War. The boat was overcrowded, but we slept in the halls and any place where we could stretch out. The ship was fired upon while en route to Shanghai, but the Cricket, a British ship, was sent to escort us and silence the guns that would destroy us. A few days later, Brother Wallace, Brother White, and Brother Nichols met us in Shanghai, and we were praising and trusting God for His love to us. 2 of our Chinese believers came from Nanking with the report that 80 soldiers had lived in our homes for 3 days. They said one could enter the homes and look from the bottom floor to the roof, as the floors and window casings were all torn up in search of treasure. We have lost all of our household goods, and our homes have been destroyed, but we are glad to have a better hope that cannot be taken away. Read Psalm 105:12-15, and Psalm 46, and Isaiah 41:9-13. These promises were our strength. Sincerely yours, Lyman W. Shaw.
Thank you very much, Lyman, Andy, and Kent. I really appreciate what you've done. I would like to pray. Dearest Father in heaven, we come before you with grateful hearts because we have seen how you have led others in the past and how your promises came true. Lord, let these memories anchor our faith in every stormy sea. Help us to trust not in what we see, but to trust in you, the unchanging God who goes before us. When the winds blow hard and the waves rise high, guide us through the darkness safely to shore. So today we praise you, our lighthouse, our protector, and our Redeemer. In the mighty and precious name of Jesus, amen. By the way, Did you happen to count how many times these faithful missionaries were fired at? I'm sure it's an unknown number. All we know for a fact is that the bullets never hit their targets and heaven overruled. Until the next story from the storm, where prayer meets power, may God be with you.